And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. From Gamer Forever, we have once again coming to us this week, Tanya from, I believe it's Tanya Saga of Evil. I believe that's the name of the series, correct? Her full name is Tanya de Grusa. I might mispronounce the name, but Tanya Saga Evil is the name of the anime. Let's see, hold on. Tanya von Degerschaff. I might be mispronouncing the name, but whatever. By the by, thanks to everyone who watched that Zanpakuto video I did. That is by far and large, I think, the highest Zanpakuto video I did. I'm guessing it's in no small part because of the character it was based on, not because it was Bleach based in Zanpakuto. I'm sure that helped to some degree. But usually I'll get characters in the low hundreds. That video right now, last I checked, is like at 1,200 plus. So thanks to everyone who watched that, and wouldn't you know it, I had another one lined up, but I quickly realized there was just not enough with that character to do a video for Pokemon on, so I went with the next one in the list, and she was it. So the character actually is a reincarnation of a Japanese salaryman who was described as kind of being very ruthless, cold, psychopathic, believing only in the dollar, believing only in, numbers and figures, singularity theory, all that. And they're reincarnated as this 9-year-old, at least I think she's 9-year-old in the series. Yeah, 9-year-old girl who is this insane, I mean that literally and figuratively, sane child war soldier in a war that is basically World War I, but with magic, controlled by a mysterious godlike being known as Being X. So yeah, it's kind of a weird anime, but it's like World War I, but with magic. So, and their main lead is a psychopathic 9-year-old girl who's a reincarnation of a Japanese businessman. So yeah, that's interesting to say the least. So what the hell kind of team would you create for? I'm going to make her image a bit larger there. Oh, that's nice. That's a bigger image. So what kind of team do I create for a character like this? Well, I think I've come up with a pretty solid team. So, and I'll get the experts' opinions, but let's get into it. So her ace comes all the way back from her original life. Her starter is Golden Go. Because she believes in the value of things. She believes in the power kind of the almighty dollar, economics, among other things that deal with numbers, things along those lines. Well, that is Golden Go's MO. You build up numbers, a number of coins, 999, and then it evolves. And you basically, it's quite a good Pokemon actually. Yeah, because it's also a ghost type too, means we can also lean towards the idea of it representing her spirit being reincarnated. That's up for interpretation, but I like that idea. She's also, though, known as a great tactician, a very, very skilled tactician. So, out of the gate, I went with Alakazam on that, which is just known to be one of the most, hyper-intelligent Pokemon in the Pokemon world. But she is also a soldier, and she's skilled with multiple weapons. Firearms is one of her specialties, but she's skilled with multiple weapons. I went with Bishop on this. It's a Bishop. It's a chess piece, so strategy. The game of chess is usually representing like military might. But beyond that, it's a solid enough Pokemon to represent a military soldier, I feel. So I think that works. I could have also gone with Phalanx, but she's kind of more of a one-man show. Mind you, she can lead people, but I feel like Phalanx doesn't really work. Because Phalanx is basically it's a group of Pokemon that work together. But now, here is, that being said, I'm going all over the place here. She does also have enhancements. Now, she is not physically very capable. She's not physically strong. But she enhances herself with enhancement magic. So I wanted a Pokemon that could represent that in some way. And I actually came across Hisuian Lilligant. Let's try that again. I hate when that happens. I go to the very top and then it just doesn't do that. Hisuian Lilligant. Now, the reason for that is it's Lith, feminine, sure, whatever. It's a fighting type. But it has a move called Victory Dance. In fact, it's the only Pokemon I can find that learns this move. And that literally raises its attack, defense, and speed. That is kind of par for the course for what she does. She does have one more augmentability, but we'll get to that in a second. She is also described as being skilled in what is known as aerial combat, where she basically zips around the field, described as a fairy-like. And she can attack individuals up in the air. She can jump high, jump good, as Samurai Jack would say. So I knew I wanted the fairy, but I wanted a fairy that's fast, athletic, nimble. There actually aren't, when you break it down in the grand scheme of how many fairy Pokemon there currently are, there are not a lot of very speedy fairy Pokemon. But one that does work, for me, is Ribombee. It's a very small Pokemon. It's a fairy type, fairy-like, and it's got a space speed, I believe, of 100, if I'm not mistaken. It's I believe Ribombee base stats. Base stats. I believe the base stats are as follows. 124 in base speed. It's actually got a decent stat line of 464. It's not the greatest in terms of like physical attack, but its strength comes in its being a speedy, think words here. Speedy special attacker with some okay special defense. But give me 1 second. Is this thing capable of learning Quiver Dance? Because if you can set a Quiver Dance up with Ribombee, oh my god, you have a busted Mon. Is it capable of learning Quiver Dance? Is it capable of River Dance? Let's find out. Because if this thing can naturally learn Quiver Dance, that just becomes a nasty, nasty combatant right there. Not quite Volcarona legendary Quiver Dance, but still a powerful Mon nonetheless. And yes, it does. At level 64, it's the last move it's capable of learning. But yes, it can learn Quiver Dance. So, yeah. And the fact is, you get Ribombee pretty early. You can evolve a Ribombee pretty early. But regardless, it's the 5th to last Mon on the team, so it wouldn't matter. You'd have Ribombee whenever you have it. Last, though, is the Ace. And even though she's not someone I would say could really effectively have a Mega Evolution because of her lack of bonding with individuals, I think you could still have a Mega Evolution. It's known that all the negative effects that are described in Pokedex entries for Mega Evolution are because the bond between trainer and Pokemon aren't the best. They're not solid enough. And therefore, there's a disconnect, and therefore Mega Evolution hurts. I went with Skarmory. Because of the enhancement she gets by using her prayer chanting. She gets golden eyes. She gets even more physically enhanced, channeling basically the power of, a divinity, or the god, the X being, if you will, being X. But because of the nature of Mega Skarmory, I think that fit best because A, it's a Mega Evolution amp, but B, the damn thing's gold. So I think that's a perfect representation. And it represents more kind of like a fighter jet, a Thunderbird. It's a weapon, basically, which would make sense for her. So that begs the question of how balanced is this team? And unfortunately, as good as this team may be in some regards, it has some major weaknesses. Now, it mostly just has ×2 weaknesses with Ghost, Ground, Psychic, Flying, Ice, and Dark. Unfortunately, it has a major problem with a ×5 weakness to Fire. And with the only exception to that being Alakazam, which luckily, because it's a trade evolution, you can have by the second gym. Now, that being said, it balances this out by having more strengths, because it has a ×2 strength against Ghost, Fighting, and Dark, but a ×3 strength against Psychic and Fairy, and 4 strength against Rock and Ice. So it does balance that ×5 Fire weakness, but that ×5 Fire weakness is still problematic. Case in point, if you were to, say, try to do a Kanto run with this team, you'd be able to go through all the first 6 gym leaders, no problem. Blaine, though, because he's a fire specialist, would be problematic. Yes, you have Alakazam at that point, but that Alakazam is fast. It hits hard for special attack. It will know Psychic at that point. You should be able to beat Blaine, but if that thing goes down, you're going to run into a severe problem, especially if he has at least 2 Mon left. But otherwise, I think you can win. And honestly, it's the same for everyone else, from Giovanni to the Elite Four. I don't think anyone is really going to give you any struggles. And frankly, Blue is one of the easiest champions you can beat. So honestly, yes, you could beat Kanto, become the champion of it. What about Johto? Honestly, the entire Johto run should not be a problem. I worried for a brief moment when it came to Golden Go because if it didn't have a non-ghost type move, it couldn't do anything against Faulkner. But it can learn Tackle or as one of its original moves. So it's fine. Otherwise, the only challenge you're going to really have is Lance. And unfortunately, that's where it's a very mixed bag with Lance. It's a maybe simply due to the fact that while you have several Steelmon that can resist the Dragon typing, he still has a Charizard on the team, and one of the Dragonites has Fire and Ice-based moves, which would hurt several of these Mon and the majority of the Mon. So even Rabambi's not going to be a lock with that for that win. And you still got to deal with the Gyarados, which you do have Lilligant, but it's a flying water type, so that's not really, it's neutral at best. You got to deal with the Aerodactyl, same issue there, except you do at least have some steel moves you can throw at it. Charizard, like you said, don't have a good answer for it. And then the two Dragonites, which at least Rabambi's immune to the Dragon moves, and your three Steel types are resistant. But I think that's a firm maybe. What about Encino? Or sorry, Hoenn. Honestly, Hoenn, quite frankly, Hoenn is one of those cases where you might struggle early on because particularly with Flannery. Flannery is going to be problematic due to what you have on your team at that point because you'd have a Ponyard, not a Bisharp. As soon as Lilligant evolves with a Stone, so you'd still have her. Golden Goat, sure, but all three of those are just straight up weak to fire. Alakazam could put some work in, but at that point you wouldn't have Psychic as a move. You'd have Psybeam and Confusion, but not Psychic. So that's problematic. And then, if you get past that, the rest of the gyms should be no problem. Most of the Elite Four shouldn't be an issue until you get the Drake. And Rabambi, look, it might be Fairy, but all of his dragons have moves that could get around it. And beyond that, you just don't have any good answers for him. Several of his, I believe one of his Flygon has either Flamethrower or Fire move on it. I know Salamence has a Fire move on it, if I'm not mistaken. It's just Drake is really difficult, if not impossible, I think, with this team to get through. And that's assuming you can get through his team. If you get to Steven, it's a firm maybe, because the only Mon you have on the team that can actually hit any of them is Hisuian Lilligant. That's it. And it can hit Claydol because of its Grass typing. It can hit Aggron. And it can hit Lileep. Half of the team it can hit because of the fighting and the grass type moves. Other than that, you don't really have a good answer at all. Maybe you could make an argument for Armaldo with some steel type moves, but you just don't have a good answer for Skarmory, and you do not have a good answer for Metagross, save for maybe Bisharp, and even then, Metagross outstats that thing 1,000%. So I don't think it's likely you can beat Steven. Sinnoh, it's just a straight no all around. It really is just a straight no. Because this is one of those cases where I don't think you could get past Golden Go, to be honest, or get past Rorik, if I'm being straight. And it's just simply due to the fact that you won't have a Steel type move under your belt. Whereas, while Steel resists Rock, it doesn't resist Ground. Ground's its weakness. And that damn Craniodust has Bulldoze on it. If you could, mind you, get to Cynthia. Could you beat Cynthia? The immediate problem here is she starts with Spiritomb. Now, you'd have to make a very hard and very conscious choice here. Do you just duke it out with Spiritomb? With Golden Go, or do you switch it out with something? Personally, I would switch it out with something. But now, let me rephrase that. I'd personally just go all out on that Spiritomb, do as much as you can. Then bring in the Rabambi, which will outspeed the Spiritomb, get a Fairy move off. Then get the hell out of there with the Rabambi, go in with either the Bisharp or the Skarmory. It's going to be immune to the poison moves of Roserade, and be resistant to the grass type moves. So you'll be able to, you'll do some damage, and you're fine. Stick with go with Skarmory, because Gastrodon's ground typing will take out the Bisharp. So you want Skarmory to have the immunity. Then you got to deal with Milotic, which you would have to go to Hisuian Lilligant for. But the problem is that thing's got Ice Beam. And I think Lilligant outspeeds a Milotic. At least Hisuian variation does. And then you're still going to have to deal with Lucario, which unfortunately at that point, now you don't have a good answer. Well, that's not true. You still have Alakazam. But Lucario's probably, you're not going to have it out at that time, so you're probably going to have to take a shot from Lucario. And then you got to deal with Garchomp. And that one's going to be the serious problematic one. But I would say it's not impossible to beat Cynthia. It's just you're going to really have to swap in and out with Mon. When it comes to Unova, you actually might struggle with Berg just due to the fact that Pawniard's not going to be evolved for a while. Golden Go with Steel type will resist the bug, sure, but Alakazam's actually weak to bug. It wouldn't be impossible, but it would be difficult. Beyond that, though, I don't think you could beat either of the two champions. You couldn't beat Alder and you couldn't beat Iris. You can't beat Iris more for the fact that the one fairy you have on the team really doesn't have the stats that hurt Hydreigon in that way. And Hydreigon, I believe, had Flamethrower. And then it's just kind of cleave through most of the team. With Alder, it's a little different. Golden Go's got a bad counter to Selgor because Steel resists bug. But eventually he's going to take it down. And no matter what, the AI always takes Volcarona for last. That being said, no Mon on this team has an answer for that Excavalier. The defense and physical stats on that thing are ridiculous. And so it's going to be so drawn out and so long on that thing. Not to mention every other Mon he has on his team leading up to the Volcarona, which at that point you were probably down at least 2 Mon. And then the Volcarona comes out, does a quiver dance, and you're screwed because it's a fire type. And a very powerful one at that. So that's no good. What about Kalos? Well, in Kalos, surprisingly, you would struggle with Grant, I'd feel. Mind you, you should have at least a Steel-type move. No, actually, you don't at that point. Make It Rain doesn't come till later, and the only real natural Steel-type move you learn is Metal Sound. But you would have Alakazam, so I think you could get through that. Flaba, though, being a fire member of the 4 would be a challenge. And then there's Diantha. She starts with Hawlucha, you start with Golden Go. You would eventually take the thing down. Then Tyrantrum comes out. You could do some damage. You should be okay. Then Aurorus comes out. You could take that down. Then Goodra. That one you might struggle a bit on just because of its bulk and it's a dragon type. You could go into Ribombee. Probably should, to be honest, just because her team is not a team Ribombee is really needed for. But it probably would go down. You'd ultimately end up losing maybe a Mon, 2 Mon at most. Gourgeist comes out, and again, you don't actually have a good answer for Gourgeist, say for maybe Bisharp. So, okay, Bisharp, sure, takes it down. And then you got Gardevoir, Mega Gardevoir, which has a very balanced moveset. It'd be tricky, but you could beat Diantha. In Galar, I think you'd stop actually at Kofu. Or Kabu. Kabu? Either way, I think you'd stop at the Fire Gym Leader simply because, yeah, Alakazam's good, but you're dealing with a G-Max Centiskorch at that point. I don't think that's going to help. And even if you could get all the way to Leon, that Dragapult outspeeds everything on this team and has Flamethrower, which means the giant majority of your team is gone. 5/6 of your team, gone. And it has Shadow Ball to deal with the Alakazam. So, yeah, Leon would make mincemeat of this team. Finally, there's Paldea, which if you did get to Gita, you could probably win, but that's assuming you got to Gita. You got both Poppy and Riku and Poppy to deal with. This team, the only real answer you have for ground is the Lilligant, but then you don't have a good answer for Steel on this team at all. And then that still begs the question, how on earth are you able to deal with the King Gambit? Which the only answer to that basically is make sure that Lilligant is still alive. If the Lilligant manages to live to get to the King Gambit, you should be fine. If it doesn't, you're in for you're going to have a bad time. So yeah, it's not going to work out well. But it's possible. In fact, it's very likely as long as you just hold that Lilligant off until the King Gambit shows up. But that's just my thoughts. What do you think of this team? Do you like it? Hate it? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.